Years ago, I came across this fascinating little detail within the English language, these rules that we live by about how we order our adjectives, even though most of us have never actually been taught this. And I had a chance to talk about this recently, use it in a sermon as an illustration for the fact that I think some of the most important parts about our faith journey are actually caught. They're observed in the people around us and the traditions that we participate in. They're maybe even imitated more than they are intentional in our theological understanding of things. And I actually think that that's a good thing, that maybe the most important parts about faith are understood in the practice of how we live together and the people that we invite around us more than we are ever really taught about them.
Because English has a very unique set, specific actually, quite rigid set of rules around the placement of adjectives. Rules that almost no one is ever taught. And that means that while almost none of us know the rules, we are all absolutely living by them all the time. See, the rule goes like this. When stacking multiple adjectives to describe a noun, the order must go determiner, number, opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, purpose, and then your noun. Now, I can almost guarantee none of you have ever been taught this, but unless you're a psychopath, I promise that you follow this rule. Let's look at this. Determiner is things like yours or my or that. Number, that's obviously the number of things we're talking about. And then opinion, that's your subjective consideration of an object, something like smelly or heroic or misunderstood. Size, age, shape, and color come next, in that order, fairly self-explanatory. Origin is something like American, French, Canadian. Material, something like wood or leather or plastic. And purpose is what you're going to use the thing for. For example, a writing pen. But if you and I were having a conversation and I mentioned my old blue writing pen, you wouldn't blink at that. Yet if I was to mention my writing blue old pen, you might think I'm having a bit of a moment of distress. And it's fascinating how rigid this all is, because I can talk to you about your beautiful old brick home, but I absolutely cannot talk about beautiful your brick old home. It just doesn't work. Even though technically all of those words are just adjectives. Now, why? Well, we actually don't know. There are some theories, but in the end, it just seems to be a pattern that we pick up as we speak to each other. In other words, there's no reason, there's no grammatical indication that we all follow a very complex rule that we've never been taught. Just for fun, though, there is an even more important rule that has also never been taught to you, but it's also one that you follow and can actually override our adjective order rules. And this is called oblate reduplication. Now, it relates to the unconscious reordering of certain vowel sounds in speech. Generally, it determines that front vowel sounds like I's and E's take precedence over back vowel sounds like A's and O's. So, in our adjective rules, opinions always come before sizes, which means we should say things like the bad big wolf. Except our oblate reduplication rule overrides that order because the front vowel I in big takes precedence. So we say the big bad wolf instead, even though that doesn't follow our first rule. What this means is that you right now have actually got two rules you've never heard of floating around in your head, dictating how you speak all the time, even overruling each other completely outside your conscious intervention. Now, why am I talking about all this? Well, it's because as much as I want to talk today about the history and the theology of baptism, I think it's actually the practice. The way that we watch each other, the way we listen to each other's stories, the way that the practice of these sacraments slowly sinks into our experience of church. In whatever tradition we've been a part of, that will actually shape how you follow in the footsteps of those who've come before you. And it will likely matter more to you than my articulation of any of it. And by the time we get to the end today, I want to argue that's actually a good thing. The baptism, perhaps all of our sacraments, are meant to be experienced more than understood.